Hey, welcome back to MobilityWOD. If you are starting to stare down a heinous pull-up thruster ladder, you're probably in the right place. Final games prep, WOD 12.5. Here's what we're talking about. Everyone has done thrusters their whole life. Everyone has been doing chest to bar pull-ups. We're going to talk about some movement efficiencies that probably aren't on your radar. First, still have some friends who've got some smoked triceps. I'm going to recommend some voodoo floss banding. What I want you to do is definitely work on the elbow. And if you've got a voodoo floss band, here's what I want you to do. Wrap yourself start, and this is an important idea. One is to reclaim your triceps. You're going to start taking it, and you're just going to start wrapping a couple inches below the elbow, and then keep taking it above the elbow the best you can. Work up. If you can have a friend wrap you, that's great. Keep going across. I think these are things are going to be at Rogue here today, tomorrow. And then we're going to keep wrapping up until you can't take it anymore. Remember, 3 cues, too tingly, too dusky, or I start to get panicky. And here's the deal. What we're going to work on this piece is not only am I going to unglue the tricep here, but I'm really going to press back and try to take myself into the position. What we're going to find is that we see a lot of athletes who are really stiff here. We've talked about smashing the tricep to improve the front rack. Well, I'm going to get that same thing, but I'm also going to improve that kind of the capacity of my elbow up and achieve a better front rack position, which is where a lot of efficiency is made. So I'm going to just floss this back and forth, camp out, make some circles, really press into that front rack position and just exaggerate that for a couple minutes. What you'll find is that once this comes off, you are definitely going to achieve a much better front rack position. I don't know if you can tell the difference, but it's significant. One of the key aspects here is that the more I can get into an excellent front rack and use my chest to jump it up, I can save my shoulders for something that matters. What we tend to see is that athletes end up having hands in on the thruster, which means that the shoulder is disengaged and they have to do a lot of pressing back to get into full extension. You'll see a lot of athletes don't actually lock out overhead because the shoulder is so unstable. If I can take myself into a good flexion, extra rotated position, because this is a combination press and front rack, then it's an easy elbow lockout once I'm overhead. And you'll see that the best athletes end up getting in this kind of front rack where their elbow's in a good strong high position, they can front squat and then just extend the elbow. It's just a little elbow extension is what we want to think about. So let's get you flossing the elbows. Come over here. Definitely spend a second working on the front rack position. Band goes low. Wind that thing up, an extra rotation. And now we're going to capture all of this bit, pull the elbow in tight, and then really try to keep the hand up as if that was the ultimate front rack position. Contract, relax here, kind of scour in that range. You're going to feel your extra rotators come on. This is nar-nar. So this is a great spot to work on these pieces to, again, improve that front rack position. The better and more effectively I keep my torso upright in this thing, the less energy gets spent on my quads, the less energy gets spent in forward kind of flexion. It's easy just to go straight up and down. So really prep that front rack position. Second big idea on thrusters today is that upper back gets tight. I've got my trusty 45-pound medicine ball here. I'm going to go ahead and jump on my favorite foam roller. And then I'm going to go ahead and extend and work on some of those ribs with a little pressure on my chest. It allows me to get into these upper sections a little bit more effectively, a little side to side. Of course, I can feel free to tie in my shoulders here, but by adding a little pressure through this rib, I think what you're going to find is that you're able to kind of get into these upper thoracic regions that are frankly very hard to access. You can do this on the double peanut, rumble roller, whatever you got going on, but take a little pressure with a medicine ball and go ahead and see if you can kind of smoke that thing. Don't be afraid to also get low into this low thoracic region to make sure that you can get good back extension. For every kind of inch forward you are, that means that shoulder's in a bad position. You've got to work harder to get that weight overhead. If I get good thoracic extension and a good front rack, squatting and thrusting becomes kind of an academic exercise. All right, so we've got some ideas on thrusters maybe you're not thinking about. Definitely be working on opening up the hips. Take yourself through our typical hip range opener where we're going to spend a lot of room here. Let the leg fall out. The more you can develop that extra rotation torque, the more you're going to keep the torso upright. Torso uprightness is a direct correlation to having foot straightish between 5 and 10 degrees and driving the knee out the bottom. This bottom position
allows me to keep my back straight, torso upright. The less compression I have, because my knees come in, then I'm going to end up rounding and get soft in the upper back position. The more effectively we can externally rotate, get the torso upright, the more the lats come on and keep the upper back upright. So extra rotation in both situations is the way to keep the torso upright and the hips upright, being efficient. Now, let's talk about pull-ups. The number one problem I see is kids on the pull-up rack have a hard time chest to bar. Number one reason, you're throwing your head. When you throw your head, shoulders come forward. It's the same effect that we see here. So if you can keep your head in line, then you're going to be able to pull all the way to chest. This is the way to get pure extension. The fastest way to dump that extension is to end up here, because it's really hard to maintain good extension to keep the shoulder head back. So try to keep that head in neutral as you're pulling chest to bar. That's going to make a big difference. We see so many kids throw their chins and they lose that capacity to tie in. The big idea here, besides, is that do you have enough extension? Of course, internal rotation is important, but the most important thing I'm going to say today is extension. If you can't get your hand very far back behind you, it's going to be very difficult to pull in. What we see is that when people are missing extension, that elbow flies out and you can't sort of consummate chest to bar pulling because the elbow comes out. I want to be able to pull in strong, keeping that elbow low and tight. That ends up being the way that I can also reconstitute torque on the way down. So to fix that, grab a bar, set up about shoulder height, pin your shoulders back first, then start dropping down, working your way together. So this is an easy way to work on extension. You can work on one side at a time if you need. You can grab a pair of rings. Skin the cats work well too. But just anchor that shoulder back first and then apply some tension and work into those corners. If you've got the P-bars, ultimately we're trying to get hands together. What you'll find is that this will pay some big dividends. Shoulders back, don't let your shoulders compensate. That's the same position that makes that closing chest to bar really bad. Head still, work on extension so you can finish that close to bar without having to do much kind of effort. Don't be afraid if your quads are still blown out from a couple days ago, a couple weeks ago, voodoo floss. Otherwise, back extension, voodoo floss, work on that front rack position, find out how tough you are. We'll see you guys tomorrow.